This past year, we collaborated with the Health and Human Sciences Department and the Physics and Engineering Department here at Fort Lewis College in Durango to conduct some simple tests on the time to dress wounds between gauze and our devices, simulated pathogen transmission between gauze and our devices, and simulated evaporative cooling studies. These aren't peer-reviewed, published studies yet, but I'll discuss the methods below. The results were all in our favor. We compared the amount of time required to treat simulated burn injuries to hands, arms from shoulder to wrist, and legs from pelvis to ankle. We learned the following. With 2-inch gauze, it takes 2 minutes and 21 seconds to dress a hand on average. With our hand glove, it takes 21 seconds. With 3 or 4-inch gauze, it takes an average of 1 minute and 26 seconds to dress an arm. With the arm sleeve, it takes 16 seconds. With 4-inch gauze rolls, it takes 2 minutes and 8 seconds to wrap a leg. With our leg pant, it takes 23 seconds. Collectively, that's roughly an 80% reduction in the amount of time it takes to dress a wound. What that means is we can all but guarantee a loose and bulky, insulating, sterile dressing that goes on rapidly, and now allows your provider to focus on more critical organ systems. While comparing the same anatomy and gauze wraps to our technology, we also wanted to examine simulated pathogen transmission into infection-prone wound beds. We applied GlowGerm to the Medix EMS gloves, and we provided gauze wraps to the hands, arms, and legs on one side of the patient. On the opposite side, we used our devices. We then examined the anatomy bilaterally with a black light, and what we learned was the following. Of the 17 participants, all of them had cross-contamination onto their hands to some degree when gauze was applied. Only 6 of them had cross-contamination with our hand gloves. Of the 18 participants, 17 of them had cross-contamination onto their arms to some degree when gauze was applied. With our arm sleeve, only 3 of the 18 had cross-contamination. Of the 9 participants that had gauze applied to their legs, 8 of them showed cross-contamination. Only 1 of the 8 had cross-contamination with our leg pant. Collectively, that shows that 95% of gauze recipients have a simulated pathogen transferred onto their skin. Only 22% have contamination with our technology. We understand that infection isn't the most pressing issue for a number of days, but we have a hard time accepting that a higher degree of sterility isn't in this patient population's interest. It's almost like saying one of my COPD patients shouldn't receive basic O2 therapy just because they've already suffered ischemic tissue. Sure, an open wound bed may have already acquired some spots of infection, but if you have the ability to treat it with a higher degree of sterility, would you not? Also, quite a few burn care professionals have stated they see our device as being useful further down in the patient's care plan than the acute phase that I encounter, but I will only speak to what I know as a paramedic. With regards to evaporative cooling for simulated hypothermia, we performed the following studies with the Physics and Engineering Department. We applied 4 thermocouples bilaterally to biceps and forearms. We obtained a baseline temperature for our mock patients. We then soaked sleeves in 21 degrees Celsius water, or ambient temperature, and we applied the sleeves on top of the arms and sensors simultaneously. One arm was wrapped in 2 rolls of 4x72-inch gauze, whereas the other one had our arm sleeve applied to it. We recorded the temperature changes as soon as the wet dressings were applied for 10 minutes. The top 2 lines show our patient's biceps and forearm temperature dropping, and then they rebound and return to baseline outright when our insulating arm sleeve is applied. The bottom 2 lines show the gauze-wrapped bicep and forearm continuing to dissipate temperature. Our participants stated they noticed the difference in evaporative cooling between the 2 wound care approaches and favored the insulating property of our arm sleeve.